Kirby Air Riders is still a bit surprising to think about. Kirby Air Ride back on the GameCube was considered sort of a one-time spin-off, right? Yet here we have a new Kirby Air Ride coming soon, so I might as well check out the original game in commemoration and preparation. I did it with Sonic Riders, so here I am with Kirby Air Ride. The main difference here is that unlike Sonic Riders, I haven't come back to this game in a long time. I know it's a good game, but I couldn't tell you why I haven't returned to it until now. But I guess I'll figure that out soon enough. So Kirby Air Ride is noteworthy for being the final Kirby game directed by Masahiro Sakurai, before Kirby Air Riders, obviously. So Air Ride was sort of his swan song for the series before going independent, and while playing the game, you can definitely tell it's with his supervision. There's a lot of shared elements with Smash Bros. Melee, which was the game he directed before this one. The design choices are similar, UI follows similar aspects, and even some sound effects are basically ripped straight from that game, but I'll get into that later on. Kirby Air Ride is something a lot of people consider a hidden gem in a sense, and while I could agree with that back then when I played it a lot, I don't know if I can confidently say the same now. With this revisit, maybe I'll have the same opinion or maybe not, and I might as well start like I did before with the game's art style and graphics. For a GameCube game, Kirby Air Ride is pretty good with its visual style. The various stages are colorful, Kirby is expressive as always, and nothing is broken or unfitting to see. In the normal Air Ride mode, all courses follow pre-established themes you're likely familiar with. Grassland, desert, lava land, metallic factory, nothing new in that sense. But the details in set dressing are what really stand out. The backgrounds and environments just give this fantastical feel to them. I don't know if that's the right word to describe it. Some of the courses have the standard bright colors you'd expect from the series, but other times the lighting and colors are slightly darker and moody. The texture work also follows that idea. It's not fully grounded in realism, but not entirely flat or stylized with exaggerated cartoony looks. Most stages are just floating courses in mid-air with some bizarre creatures in the backgrounds. Like, what's this creature in a test tube doing in a game like Kirby? It's also strange and weird, but I think it works fine enough for the game despite that. The Top Ride game mode is more minimal in design, mostly due to the game mode's smaller scale, but it still establishes its stage themes well. The items are where most of the game's focus falls on, and sometimes the abundance of items makes things a bit hard to discern, but otherwise it looks good enough. City Trial is where the art style takes on a more flat and simple look for its main map. Areas are split by their distinct settings, but textures are more flat and move away from the detailed look of the other two modes. The more realistic textures are only present in the stadium events. It's likely designed this way to make items stand out with their distinct shapes and colors, but that's only an assumption and it really doesn't matter to me either way since both styles look completely fine. Kirby Air Ride doesn't really have much issues visually. Everything fits pretty well within the series' established style, and there's basically no technical hiccups to see. Although I'm pretty sure the Kirby's T-pose at the start of every Top Ride race. At the very least, it's quick enough to not really notice it. As for music and audio design, there's also no real flaws. Compositions are all really good stuff as expected from a Kirby game. A lot of them are standard tracks for races and all, but some are goofy and some are dramatic for certain events. The highlights for me are Celestial Valley, Top Ride's Light and Metal, and City Trial's City theme. And if the UI didn't remind you of Smash Bros already, the sound effects certainly will. Some of them are practically ripped from that game. Yeah, no, those are definitely from Melee. Everything else is pretty much original and completely serviceable. No obnoxious sound effects or wonky volume mixing. It's all well made, but doesn't leave much to comment on, so let's move on. Now the gameplay for Air Ride is a special case. The game itself is split into 3 different game modes: Air Ride, Top Ride, and City Trial. They all focus on entirely different gameplay ideas, but they share the same fundamental mechanics, so let me go over those real quick. Kirby Air Ride is extremely simple in terms of control. You use the control stick and the A button for basically everything. Camera control is there obviously, but everything gameplay wise is only done with the stick and button. Kirby moves forward automatically, and holding A will have him brake and charge up a boost. Letting go will have you boost forward, which sounds useful for gaining speed, but it's useless for speeding up on straightaways. You're meant to charge up while taking turns, so the brake and boost can help you take that turn faster. You can also perform a spin attack by shifting left and right quickly, which is good for taking out basic enemies. And when an enemy is close by, you can quickly charge to try and inhale them, either spitting them out to another target or copying their abilities for yourself. Riding off a ramp also allows you to glide, which helps avoid any hazards below or can be used to reach shortcuts. Each game mode also has a handful of switches or boost pads to use, but they all require a quick charge to activate. That's about everything the game needs you to learn, so let's start with Air Ride and go down from there. Air Ride is the standard racing mode of the game. Pick a track, choose an Air Ride machine, and get first place. Your best chance of winning is using enemies and gimmicks to your advantage. Defeating enemies gives a slight boost, so they're your best method of getting ahead. You can also copy abilities of certain enemies, allowing you to defeat other enemies more efficiently or mess with other racers. Every course is pretty simple aesthetically, but unique in their design, as they all have distinct set pieces and layouts from one another. Celestial Valley has you ride through a cave with 3 routes and ride down a huge river to the finish line. Machine Passage has a cannon to shoot from and a bunch of these opening walls to disrupt your pace. No track is alike one another and are memorable in their own ways. There's also plenty of air ride machines to unlock and use, varying from fairly useful to not very great. Each machine usually has a specific strength with a big weakness to keep some sort of balance. The Warp Star is a good standard machine, while the Winged Star favors gliding over normal cruising. The Wagon Star has better base stats but can't charge up a boost. The Swerve Star has a consistent high speed but can't turn outside of charging. There's about 13 more to the list, but you get the idea. Most have their advantages, but at the cost of something important to make sure nothing's overpowered. However, some machines simply suck in every way, pun not intended. The Turbo Star has better speed on average, but has weird turning and charging mechanics. The Slick Star has a slightly better than average top speed, but drives like a bar of soap. And the Bulk Star is just actually garbage. It needs to charge in order to move and only has good defense and attack stats. But in a game mode primarily focused on racing, that means a guaranteed 4th place no matter what. Anyways, unlocking these machines does require certain criteria to be met, and that's where the game's checklist comes into play. Throughout your playtime, you may check off some boxes off this checklist. Whether that's finishing a course under a certain time or doing a certain action with a certain machine, you'll check off some boxes and occasionally unlock new things as a result. This is how you unlock different machines to use, unlock the one locked track, get new colors for Kirby, and even unlock Meta Knight and King Dedede as playable characters. This is one of the main appeals of Kirby Air Ride as a whole, because if you're not very fond of the checklist system, you may find it hard to come back to Kirby Air Ride outside of a few exceptions. Yes, that also means Air Ride as a game mode may not keep your attention for long, because truth be told, it doesn't have a lot of substance to it. Despite Air Ride being the main racing mode of the game, it's pretty shallow in terms of overall content. There's only about 16 different machines and characters to choose from and only 9 courses to play on. The one unlockable track isn't even interesting, just a barren track with no enemies and basically no gimmicks. And even with the racing as is, I can't say I enjoy it entirely. It's interesting for sure, but sometimes I feel like I'm not doing much to play the game. There's moments where the track is just a shallow turn or a straight line, and the simple control scheme leaves very little in terms of engaging moments. It makes some victories or losses feel a bit empty as a result, because I know that I did try my best, but with how simple the game is, I feel like I didn't do much to earn that result. It doesn't help that when falling behind, you may end up stuck in last place due to how enemies spawn in. Everyone ahead of you will most likely deal with all the enemies in front, leaving you with basically nothing to try and catch up. There is a rule to buff the speed for anyone in last place, but there's still a chance for you to be left behind regardless. Some sections also feel a bit awkward to traverse, like constant turns or narrow hallways. The camera can certainly struggle during those moments too, leaving you with very little time to react to what's ahead. That's when I find myself smacking against the walls and I'm not sure if I'm doing something wrong. Other issues are more on the game's controls. When making small adjustments to the left or right, I might accidentally spin attack instead. Spin attacks are also mostly useless, since the attack range is short, you're still vulnerable to damage, and missing your attacks will have you slow down. Inhaling enemies is also kinda awkward to pull off since it's done automatically based on nearby enemies. When someone gets near, I try to inhale, but I'm apparently too far for it to work. So I end up getting closer and trying again and again, which slows me down because inhaling is the same button as charging and braking. It can be a real hassle sometimes, and it leaves me wishing the game had at least 2 buttons to use instead of just one. I get that the limit of 1 button was to make learning the game easier for everyone, but it comes at the cost of shoving every mechanic between 2 input methods, which can end up causing me to do things I don't intend to do. Thankfully, the game is very lenient when it comes to making mistakes, but it can still end up costing you the race, which makes the results feel even less earned than it already did. Air Ride is a mostly sufficient racing mode, and that checklist helps make it a bit more interesting, but that limited control scheme and a handful of snags in between it all doesn't make it a full game seller to me. It's good for an hour or so, but that's about it. Thankfully, the other 2 game modes are there if Air Ride didn't quite convince you, with Top Ride being next on the list. Top Ride is basically what you get if you took Air Ride and turned it into a bite-sized version with top-down racing instead, hence the name Top Ride. And really, that's the best way to describe the entire mode. Top Ride is a top-down take of the Air Ride racing mechanics but scaled down. You charge and drift the same way and spin attacks are still present, but everything else has been downsized or outright removed for the mode's smaller structure. Instead of 9 courses, there's only 7, and you go from a total of 16 machines down to just 2, which only affects how you steer your machine. No special attributes whatsoever. You're also unable to glide here, since the game's top-down perspective probably wouldn't work well with it. Course design is also very small, basically all fitting within the entire screen. Gimmicks are still present though, so they keep those unique traits. And thanks to the game's smaller design and tighter track layouts, I feel Top Ride is actually more engaging than Air Ride. Since you'll be drifting more often in such a short time, it's a constant challenge to take those turns as best as possible while dealing with other players and hazards. Enemies and copy abilities have been replaced by random items that you can pick up, which makes things a bit more chaotic but a lot more fun to play with. I don't have to worry about inhaling anymore, I can just pick up an item and use it or spin to get rid of it. With certain stage gimmicks, they add even further to the action on screen, making every race engaging throughout. The downscaled nature of Top Ride helps make the gameplay more energetic, and to me, a lot more fun than Air Ride. But because of its smaller design, it's also much shorter than Air Ride in terms of content. I played through all the tracks in under 20 minutes, and unlike Air Ride, there's no unlockable machines to change things up. Every race and player stick with the same abilities, and items are basically the same throughout each race. Checklist unlockables only range from different Kirby colors or a new item to play with, and that's really it. Top Ride is a fun bite-sized take on the core gameplay, but it sacrifices a lot of content to keep things small and it suffers as a result. I'd still say it's equal to Air Ride in terms of ranking, but that's because it's a lot more involved than Air Ride's overall gameplay loop. Anyways, we've still got the last game mode of Kirby Air Ride, and this is what I and many others remember the game for: City Trial. In this game mode, you and 3 other players are dropped into this sandbox area to collect upgrades for your machine and beef up your main stats. Increase your speed, glide, turn, or anything else, and once the timer's up, everyone's set into a stadium match to compete for first place. Whether that event is based on fighting, racing, or anything in between, it's mostly random in what the game sets up, so it's best to prepare for anything. With this gameplay loop, you're given a lot of possibilities in what you're able to do within the city. Maybe find a new machine lying around and use that instead. Do you focus on upgrading a single stat or try and be an all-rounder? Maybe you can fight other players to destroy their machines and ruin their plans. It's very open-ended in what you want to achieve, and how you deal with the upcoming stadium match is completely up to you. Midway through each game, a short event can play to spice things up. All items can be bouncy, all boxes might have the same item, or maybe everyone has their machines go on a wild frenzy. Again, it's all random and adds a nice layer to the core gameplay loop. With this kind of structure, City Trial instantly becomes a lot more interesting to play thanks to the amount of variation and replayability it offers. No game is alike one another, and while you can go for the same strategy every game, what stadium match comes after is usually always random. You can set it to be a specific event, but that's not as fun or as interesting. The checklist is also present for City Trial, and I feel it has a better purpose here. Aside from the standard achievements and Kirby colors, you'll also have some stadium matches to unlock as well. Most can also be obtained by playing them when they're randomly chosen in a real match, but being able to replay stadium matches on their own makes certain achievements a lot easier. I still would have liked more unlockables to get, but it's certainly better than what Top Ride had. At the very least, having a second unlockable map to play on would have been nice. City Trial only has one map, but I can appreciate having it split into different areas with their own themes. There's the city with tall buildings, a forest with a hidden underground section, a 3-leveled lounge. Again, they're all unique in their own ways. I do wish there was at least a second map, since having only one can get a bit stale, but it's not a major problem. I did find the temporary buffs a bit useless though. While I can appreciate having a copy ability to break boxes easier or fight other players, I don't really veer towards other items like the power or defense boosts because they just aren't as important. I'd much rather just go for normal stat upgrades instead because they're more worth it in the long run. Certain stadium matches can also be a bit cheap. A good portion of the stadium events are just racetracks taken from the Air Ride game mode, but only with one lap. Destruction Derby 4 and 5 are just portions of the main map with barriers, and versus King Dedede is not very easy to complete since everyone has to work together to win, but are still able to hit each other by accident. I actually found it easier to fight Dedede on my own because I wouldn't have to worry about others disrupting my attacks. Fighting in general is just not the game's strong suit. It's possible to get stun locked by constant damage and you can't do much to break free until the attacker stops. And good luck trying to deal with players behind you because you're practically a sitting duck if you try to turn around. City Trial also has a bit of a balancing problem just like Air Ride. While you can explore and use whatever machine is lying around to your benefit, there's a much better option that can net an easy win. In red boxes, there's a small chance that they can drop one piece of 2 legendary machines, the Hydra or the Dragoon. Collect all 3 pieces of a machine and you get complete access to it with broken and overpowered stats. The Dragoon is great in speed and even more powerful when it takes flight. The Hydra needs to charge to get moving, but once it's done, it's an unstoppable tank that can one-shot basically anything. This is what can throw off the balance of the game, since once a legendary machine is obtained, there's basically no stopping it. but since they need to be assembled with 3 hidden pieces, it does make it tricky to find and even a bit risky. You might beeline towards every red box for the entire game, but if you fail to find the pieces in time, you'll be left with terrible stats to work with because you favored red boxes which don't drop stat upgrades. Even then, I do think it's kinda easy to find the pieces with some prior knowledge. They're usually in red boxes and more hidden areas like in the underground section of the forest or under the volcano, so you can form some strategy to get the legendary machines more consistently. It's just up to RNG or the other players to stop you, which you know the CPUs won't try to do. But even with those issues in mind, I enjoy City Trial too much to make the problem stand out. Jumping in and trying to make the best machine for the final showdown is almost always a fun time. And since the game's focused less on racing or inhaling enemies, I don't run into much of the control issues I had with Air Ride. Sure, City Trial barely focuses on the racing aspect of the game, but it offers such a fun replayable experience that I honestly couldn't care less. Besides, if you're looking for a racing mode, you've got Air Ride and Top Ride just for that. City Trial tries something completely different and stands out as the best mode as a result. If I'm ever coming back to Kirby Air Ride in any form or fashion, it's most likely to play City Trial again. It kinda reminds me of a battle royale in some way, but comparing City Trial to a battle royale is probably considered sacrilege. Without a doubt, City Trial is the mode that basically sells Kirby Air Ride as a worthwhile game. I'm confident that for most people who remember or still enjoy Kirby Air Ride, it's most likely because of City Trial. Don't get me wrong, I think Air Ride and Top Ride are perfectly fine with what they accomplish. They're different takes to the racing genre that may have their issues, but are still completely competent as racing games. But City Trial just blows them out of the water with how much more it allows the player to do. The amount of content between both Air Ride and Top Ride simply doesn't match what City Trial has. The amount of depth it has is what ultimately takes my attention more than the other two. I can commend the attempt at making a racing game with a simpler control scheme, but my main issues with Air Ride and Top Ride were partially related to the lack of control I had. Inhaling was problematic at times, spins could be done on accident, and the little I could do to catch back up felt out of my control. Top Ride certainly eased up on that, but it came at the cost of how little there was to do. And that goes for both modes. Going through all tracks in both Air Ride and Top Ride only takes about an hour or so, and there's only time attack in the checklist to offer some sort of replayability. City Trial, on the other hand, offers a lot more right off the bat with much more variation from its concept alone. Finding the right machine, getting upgrades, exploring for boxes, fighting other players, there's so many choices to make in preparation for the upcoming competition, and it's all up to you to decide. The random events and stadium matches add to the overall enjoyment, because everyone's unsure of what they might have to deal with, keeping each round fresh and unique. City Trial is so good that Sakurai would end up adding a similar mode to Smash Bros 3DS with Smash Run, which I had a lot of fun with as well for similar reasons. I'm confident in saying that Kirby Air Ride is definitely a good game overall, but I can't lie, City Trial carries it a lot. If the game was left with Air Ride, Top Ride, and a different racing mode variation, I'd be hard pressed to call the entire game a hidden gem. The basis of the game's mechanics being centered around a simplified control scheme is not a bad idea. But let's be real here, Mario Kart already fills that simplicity quota pretty well. One button to accelerate, one to trick and drift, and the other to use items. And even if some people might not understand drifting, the items still add a helping hand to those left behind, and contribute to the chaotic fun nature of Mario Kart as a whole. Trying to strip all that down to a single button means sacrificing comfortable playability in an attempt to make things more accessible, but I think it goes too far and brings down the entire package as a result. For a kart racer, Kirby Air Ride is innovative, but nothing groundbreaking. In some ways, it's even a bit shallow with some courses being too simple and only having a handful of tracks to race on. The unlockable machines and checklist system help to keep you playing, but that doesn't last very long for me. City Trial is just much more interesting right from the start, and it's why I can come back to it anytime. If you're checking out Kirby Air Ride for any reason, outside of curiosity for the upcoming Kirby Air Riders, then City Trial will be your main focus. Unfortunately, just like before, if you are looking to play this, you're out of luck unless Nintendo decides to add this game to the Switch 2 GameCube library, or you somehow find other ways to play it. I'd recommend playing this game just for City Trial alone, and I know I'm sounding like a broken record, but I can't say it enough. Air Ride and Top Ride are also good modes, just not the main course. With Kirby Air Riders giving this concept another shot, I'm willing to give it a chance if it works on fleshing out the racing mechanics and gives us more courses to play with. Maybe give us more control options, higher speed settings, or just more tracks to play on that won't last me an hour and a half. The checklist is also a great idea and definitely a keeper seeing how Smash Bros has kept it, but I feel like the unlocks should be more frequent and substantial. Lots of the unlocks are very minor or cosmetic, with the tasks either being simple and lenient or highly specific. City Trial is fine as it is right now, but I wouldn't mind other additions that added to the core experience. However, if Kirby Air Riders has similar problems as its predecessor, I might be on the fence for immediately diving into it, especially if it costs something like $70. I'm not spending that kind of money on something that only has 4 hours of content. I'm hoping that isn't the case, but we'll have to wait and see. Either way, it's time to wrap things up. Like if you enjoyed watching, subscribe for more, and do all the other YouTube stuff, or don't, that's up to you, and I'll see you later.